Good morning, Suzuki Science, and we are now in grade 10s. We are now in week 4, and this week there is no new learning. This is the week where you demonstrate what you've learned over the past 3 weeks and what you learned before the March break. Before the March break is when we started the cells unit. We did some labs related to it. We did some learning. We worked with the microscope. We took a look at the cell. We started to learn what the cell is. We learned about the cell theory and the 3 tenets that make up the cell theory. We also looked at a reason why cells are so small. They can't get too large. If they do, they're incredibly inefficient. We learned how to use a tool in order to look at the cell, the microscope. Sadly, we don't get to play with that any longer. And then we looked at what happens when a cell does get too large and it needs to do something and undergoes mitosis. The cell cycle undergoes mitosis and replicates and produces a new cell. We looked at what happens if an error occurs, causing a cancer. And we looked at the underlying mechanisms of, big general idea of cancer, what cancer is about. Then we looked at how cells, when they replicate, how they start off as a common cell that has any fate and they can specialize and become particular types of cell. And how cells can then congregate together for a common function to create certain types of tissue, how certain types of tissue can come together and have a certain function in an organ, and how organs can come together and have a certain function around an organ system. So we looked at the whole hierarchy of this cell up to the organ system. Then you had an opportunity to play with some dissection software. Sadly, it doesn't replace the real thing, but hopefully you got a feel for what the inside of a frog looks like. In grade 11 biology, if you decide to take it, we will look at a fetal pig. There'll be a virtual dissection, and then there'll be the real dissection, and I'll give you an opportunity to do something you didn't do this year. Now, to culminate our learning, we are basically taking all the activities we've done up until now, we're kind of putting it together. This week, you're creating a PowerPoint. You've actually already done this. If I go into our course here, go into assignments, and go into our carousel. And then in here where you guys submitted your work, you'll notice that I published feedback. So I've given you all feedback so that you can find out how to best improve your presentation. Now, some of you did the work, which is excellent. Some of you did not. Some of you didn't even sign up for the actual technology. So here's the original exercise. It is in D2L and it will be linked in Google Classroom as well. And as I scroll down here, there was a Google Doc, and in that document, you're supposed to choose one of the 30 technologies that were there. And so you can see I copied everyone's name from that sign-up sheet over to this document here. Some names are missing, so you are the ones who chose not to participate in the class instruction for that day or week or whatever we were working this on. So clearly, if you didn't even choose a topic, that means you probably didn't work on the PowerPoint. Once you have selected your topic here, then you're following the instructions. There was a template. The template, slide 1 through slide 7. It's been updated because originally you were going to be in class and we were going to present and we're going to have a test and we're going to have a lab. Now we only have this. This is our only evaluation for the unit. At the end of this week, you're going to have this PowerPoint voiceover that you're going to have, and you're also going to have a series of questions that are going to be delivered through D2L like your previous weekly quizzes. So slide 1, slide 2, notice slide 2 is actually divided into 3 parts now. These are additions. So this is new. Name a specific type of cell that is important to your organ. So that's new because we talked about cell specialization. Make a specific relationship about how an organ system that is affected by your disease and how it might affect any other systems. Okay, so that is also new. So that's focusing on the interdependence of organs and organ systems. Under slide 7, COVID-19 is currently affecting every aspect of society. That is also brand new. Okay, the rest of it still remains the same. However, now that we've completed the unit, you can have a more complete submission. So in your feedback file, for those of you who did complete it, for those of you who did not, I'll show you a typical example. I took the name off of this person, but here's a typical example. So I took the slide that you submitted and I went over here to the right hand side. So in slide 1, we did the Dear 14-Year-Old Me Flipgrid, of which I think 18 of you did it, 19, so that was pretty good. Most of you in the class did it. And in there, you were trying to encourage people to understand why your disease, your cancer, is so problematic, and make people and make yourself, your younger self, think. So you guys did an excellent job. You created this monologue, you established pathos and sympathy and compassion. So you can use that same portion of a monologue, you can use some of that same information and use that to introduce this, because this is around a disease as well. It's not the same disease, you might have to change a few words here and there, but it's an excellent start. On slide 2, many of you did not go into enough detail with the organs or the organ systems. You just kind of said, oh, it's a nervous system, and you showed me a picture and went on. You didn't talk about the parts of the digestive or respiratory or circulatory system that play a role in that disease. So try to be more specific. As I said, 2B is new. 2C is also new. The symptom, most of you did a really good job talking about the symptoms of your disease. Some of you were a little confused. You did a technology, but you didn't focus on a disease. So therefore, clearly, if you have just a technology, how are you going to talk about the symptoms of a technology? That doesn't make sense. With your technology, you're also supposed to choose a disease that your technology is used to diagnose or give a prognosis or whatever. Public health strategies. There's been a lot of information lately around COVID-19 from the Public Health Ontario, Public Health of Canada, so you should have a better understanding of who public health is. Many of you talked about personal strategies or medical strategies that might be used to help with your disease. Public health is bigger. And what is the government doing? Both local, municipal, the city, the province, and the whole country. What are they doing to ensure that the person with your disease or this disorder is not going to be greatly affected? Is it through education? Is it through extra incentives? Is it through whatever? So right now, there's a lot of information around public health that you should be able to relate to. New technology, so you're focusing on your technology and then pick something that really connects it to the past 20 years. So telling me something about a CAT scan or an MRI is actually not considered a new technology, that's quite old. Ethical issues, I've given you a blurb. So for those of you who did this in your feedback, I've given you this big giant blurb about what ethics are, ethics in science, to give you some starter questions that you can use to help you focus on the ethics, because I think a lot of you are confused about what ethics are. And in slide 7, you did the coronavirus map at the very beginning of our distance learning. Many of you worked in groups, some of you did it individually. That map itself, you could actually insert it into your presentation. It will be really small, so you probably want to blow up the sections, zoom in, and show the parts that are more relevant to this presentation, or add a new branch. But if you incorporate that, because that wasn't marked for a level, that was marked for complete or incomplete. But now you've done the work, put it in here, and it'll make your product that much better. It'll be a superior product that represents 4 weeks of learning. That would be a really good way for you to leave this unit. Okay, so that is the slideshow. Excuse me, that is a slideshow. There is a section on optics. Notice I crossed it out. We are still doing it, but that's not to the next unit. So a couple of you did jump into the optics section. I'm not marking it. I'm not looking at it. I'm not giving any feedback. That is something that is not to be completed yet. So that's why it's crossed out. This debate portion, that's not something we're doing yet. That is something we'll come back to in a month once we finish optics. So you are completing this. There are a couple of different levels. The first level is just completing the PowerPoint and then submitting it into the Google Classroom. The second level is completing the PowerPoint with a voiceover. So let's pretend that we are going to present it to somebody. So in a PowerPoint, what you're supposed to do is have minimal words, the key ideas on each of the slides. Right, the key ideas on each of the slides. So this, way too much information. This, way too much information. What you should have is just keywords and key phrases. That's all that should be on each slide. So when you take a look at this slide here, you'll notice that there are key phrases, simple sentences, statements. You're not overwhelmed with big giant paragraphs of text. That would be something that you could consider if no one was presenting your slide, your PowerPoint. Since you will be presenting it, you want to have minimal information. And then all the extra information you could put in a script, like this student here has done. Right? So this is the stuff that she would say when she's giving the presentation. So I'll see that slide 1, she has all this information here. Oops, I closed it. But in slide 1, she has all that information. And then if you look at the slide itself, there's 2 or 3 major key phrases. That's what you're supposed to do when you're giving a presentation. Okay? Now, in this particular submission, for the minimum, you're submitting the PowerPoint, and that's the minimum. If you're looking for complete and comprehensive exemplary work, then you're doing a voiceover. To do a voiceover in PowerPoint, for example, is very straightforward. Once you've recorded it, then you're going to upload the voiceover PowerPoint to the Google Classroom. I'm going to make sure there's a common folder where you guys can access every single presentation, and you'll take a look and learn from each other. For some of you, you might want to get the full presentation experience. So as opposed to doing a voiceover, we can meet. I'll make a time on Friday, and instead of doing a voiceover, you will join me in the Google Meet classroom. So it'll be live. There'll be, I'm guessing, 5, 6 students who might want to do this. It could be any number. And as opposed to doing a voiceover on the slideshow and preparing and putting it up in advance, you can present it to the class that actually decides to do that presentation with me, and you present it to me. So we'll be together for probably 45 minutes or so. You'll present. You'll have your control of your desktop. You'll move it around, and as you're moving it around to each slide, you'll talk and then try to make eye contact with the camera like I am. So regardless of what mode you take, whether or not it's just the PowerPoint for the minimum, the PowerPoint with a voiceover, or the PowerPoint presentation to the class with you talking in a Google Meet live, those are all due on Friday. Also on Friday, you will be given a series of questions that represent the learning of the entire unit. I won't call it a test because it's not a classic test, but it will be very similar in style to the multiple choice questions you've been getting for the past 2 weeks. Except this time, it'll be considered a part of the evaluation. I'll use this to determine how much you actually learned about the cell story from the beginning into the organ systems. All right, so that is due on Friday. For those of you interested in doing the presentation, I will put up some kind of survey or some kind of tool up in the next couple of days, and you can let me know. All right, there is no new learning, and this is it.